My name is Griffith Swidler, and I am the School Partnerships Manager here at the Commonwealth Club, World Affairs. We are thrilled to have you all here today. We have a great day prepared. For those of you who don't know Commonwealth Club World Affairs or have never been here before, we are the oldest and largest nonpartisan public affairs forum in the United States. Every year we host hundreds of programs with scientists, artists, elected officials, community leaders, and influencers who come to talk about topics ranging from politics to education, climate change to social justice, entertainment, culture, and more. We have lots of options for students and educators, including low-cost memberships and free tickets. Creating Citizens is Commonwealth Club World Affairs' civics education initiative, building on foundational values of civility, mutual respect, and informed action. Creating Citizens engages young people and adults in meaningful civil dialogue about important contemporary issues so that we can all become active, informed participants in our shared democracy. We are grateful to the Corrett Foundation for their generous support of Creating Citizens and for their dedication to improving the quality of civics education in California and beyond. Now let me introduce our speakers. We are very lucky to have two strong civics education advocates with us here today. Tani Cantil-Sakaue is the president and CEO of the Public Policy Institute of California, a think tank that focuses on informing and improving public policy in California. From 2011 to 2022, she served as the 28th Chief Justice of California. The former Chief Justice was the first person of color and the second woman to hold that position. Before her time on the California Supreme Court, she served more than 20 years on California appellate courts. Through projects such as the Power of Democracy Initiative, launched in 2013, the former Chief Justice has remained a strong supporter of civics education and civil discourse in California. Joining the Chief Justice on stage is our moderator, Eric Kasher. Eric is an attorney that has spent more than 15 years serving public entities and nonprofit organizations as a strategic advisor. From 2013 to 2017, Eric served as commissioner on the California Fair Political Practices Commission, an entity that enforces political campaign lobbying and conflict of interest laws. Additionally, in collaboration with the United States State Department, Eric has spent time in Namibia, Zambia, and Sweden, talking with local civic leaders about the importance of ethical leadership in government and youth participation in electoral politics. He's also a lecturer at UC Berkeley School of Law. So please join me in welcoming the Chief Justice and Eric Kasher to the stage.
All right. Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? Good, okay. So thanks for having us. It's very nice to see everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and hop right into the questions here for Judge Tani. We're here to talk about public service and civics, and we wanted to ask, where are you from, and when did you first become interested in pursuing a career in public service?
Thank you, Eric. Thank you to the Commonwealth Club, and thank you all for being here. I first became involved or interested in public service when I was very young. My parents were both from farm working communities and had been farm workers, and they came to California with the dream of an education. And they thereafter were able to transition into working for the state of California. And that basis gave us an opportunity as a family to have a home and to live. And so I became interested in public service because I saw how much it meant to them, how it raised communities, and how it did well for communities. But also justice, Eric, because my family had a lot of challenges growing up. We were evicted from our home because of eminent domain. We owned the home. Government wanted to put something better. We lived in what was considered a blighted area. Who knew? It looked like everybody else's neighborhood I knew. But also at that time, my uncle could not marry his Caucasian wife. He had to leave the state to do so. My grandmother couldn't put property in her name. So there was just a lot of issues that attracted me to sort of why things existed the way they did.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Amazing background in such an interesting story. You kind of rose through the ranks as an attorney, and you served as California's Chief Justice for 12 years. What does a Chief Justice do? And what are some of the responsibilities of the California Supreme Court?
Thank you, Eric. Well, as a lawyer, I know you know most of this, but I will say The charter document of our state, the California Constitution, calls the role the Chief Justice of California. So one of those roles as the Chief Justice of California is to be the head of the Supreme Court, the seven-justice court, the highest court in California. But the judiciary, as you know, is the third branch of government, co-equal to the legislative branch and to the executive branch. So the Chief Justice wears like 3 hats. So the first hat is with my colleagues, 6 other people, writing decisions, listening to oral argument, deciding cases for all of California as the final word on the rule of law. That's a full-time job. And so I have help with all that. I had incredible attorney help and administrative help with that. But the other hat that the Chief Justice of California wears is she runs the third branch of government. So she meets regularly with the governor and regularly with the 2 heads of the legislature, the Senate President Pro Tem and the Assembly Speaker, because the 4 of us run government in California. Do we get along? Sometimes. Not so much, which makes for even greater work when you don't get along, because that means you have more meetings about policy, more meetings about rules, more meetings about dissatisfaction with each other's work. So as the Chief Justice, I wear the hat of running the judicial branch, but I don't run it alone, because California's judiciary is the largest law-trained judiciary and the most diverse in the United States and probably the world. Over 2,000 judicial officers and staff. And so as a result, we have a council, a board of directors called the Judicial Council. This is the rule-making policy of the judiciary. The Chief Justice is the head of it. It's a group of about 31 people, lawyers, judges, and professional staff. And we write the rules and the policy for the judiciary. So when you get to jury duty, when you turn 18 and you start serving, you'll find that all of those rules and the standards are promulgated, published, and controlled by the Judicial Council. The jury instructions you'll listen to are made by the Judicial Council. So we run every aspect of the judiciary for the state of California with the help of the judges and staff and lawyers on this council. And then the chief's last job, I suppose, probably is just to ensure and keep the judiciary in a policy-making mode, that it is serving justice and getting justice to the people who need it.
Wonderful. It's an honor to sit next to you here, because you're very much a trailblazer. And my mom is Filipina, and you are a historic first. You were the first Filipina American and only the second woman ever to serve as the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court. That is a remarkable achievement, let me tell you, as a practicing attorney and someone who's been practicing for a long time. Rare air here. It's not easy to do what she's done. Talk to us about your path growing up in Sacramento and attending community college to becoming the Chief Justice of the highest court in the state.
Thank you, Eric. Well, I will tell you that I am an unlikely Chief Justice. If you sit around the table of most Chief Justices and Supreme Courts, not only in California, but the United States and even the United States Supreme Court, most chiefs come from the Ivy League schools. They come from Harvard, Yale, Columbia. I come from Sacramento City College. I come from the University of California in Davis. And I say that because I've always been public schooled, and I went to a community college in high school. In my senior year, I had dual enrollment, what we call now at where I work, the Public Policy Institute of California. I went to a community college in my senior year. So I was able to graduate early from high school with college credit units. Then I went down the street to the community college, and partly because these are the days of no internet. So you knew what you knew based on what your friends were saying or doing, and what the teachers and the counselors at school advised you. Well, I don't even remember talking much to a college counselor. I don't think they saw me as college material in those days, honestly, and I didn't think of myself as that necessarily. So I went to community college because that's where everyone went. It was just down the street, less than a mile from the high school. And I went there and I had my life change at community college. I'm 17 years old or so. First time I'm in control of my schedule. Here's the beauty of high school. They actually care if you show up. They call your parents if you don't show up. They ask questions where you are. As soon as you graduate, no one cares where you are. You don't show up to class in college, who cares? No one cares, you're not even missed. So this is the first time I'm on my own, and I'm in a community college, and I have to pick my classes and get to there on my own, and I'm sitting with people who are reinventing themselves. I'm sitting in community college next to a clerk from Penny's who wants to be a manager. I'm sitting next to a woman who's thought she'd be married her whole life. She's now divorced and has to find a job. I'm sitting next to a woman who wants to be a dental hygienist. And I've never met, these people are not my age. And I start talking to them and I learn so much from them about life, about what I should be worried about and what I should look forward to. And they're giving me advice like, you know, you ought not to eat Twinkies and chocolate milk for lunch. And I'm like, why not? And so we're having this rich discussion that I never had in high school. I had lots of discussions in high school, but we were all the same age, same experience. So community college really opened my eyes to dreaming and trying things I'd never tried before, and knowing that there's a future out there that could change. So from community college, I went on to a 4-year college, ultimately UC Davis, and then took a year off to visit my ancestral homeland, the Philippines. The richest people in the world were my relatives, and the poorest people. I'd visit my relatives who lived 9 to a hut on stilts in the swamps of the Philippines. And then I'd go visit my mother's side of the family, and you know, they have chauffeurs and drivers and chefs. So I did a year of that and realized I need to land somewhere in the middle of that. And then came back and went to law school.
Wonderful. High school. Like many of the students here are in high school. And when it comes to public service and civic engagement, are there things that you know now that you wish you knew when you were in high school?
Thank you. That's a great question, right? That's a really good question. Yes, absolutely. I was involved in student government in high school, but I wish I had known to get more involved in the clubs that I didn't have a skill in, with people that I didn't have anything in common with. In high school is a real opportunity to expose yourself to different experiences and to meet people who think differently, and to see yourself in different roles. I like the idea that in high school it's a really safe environment and an encouraging environment to experiment and find out more about yourself. Right? Probably our core is we're still who we were in high school, but we have built so much of our own foundation based on the experiences. So high school is an opportunity I wish I had joined chess club. I play chess, but really poorly, with no strategy at all. But that would have probably helped me later in law a little bit more. I didn't join speech and debate. I joined that in a community college. I wish I'd started a little sooner. I would have been less shy. There are just things you can do to grow yourself in high school that you should reach out and try, because you, as much as you know yourself now, there's so much more of you to know. I also wish that in high school I had reached out to the teachers and found out, are there any other activities I could be doing, should be doing? I wish I was one of those kids who started her own club. I joined things, but you know, I could have started something in high school and brought people together. That's something that I think you'll find you might do later on in life, and people want to belong. I wish I'd done more, I think. I did do things, but I think I would have loved to have engaged. You know, nowadays on the internet and with all the different civics programs, you can link to a lot of different organizations. You have internet access to information. At the Public Policy Institute of California, where I'm now the president and CEO, and I'm here with some folks from there, we have free information in video form, in fact sheets that relate to you. We have a college explainer. Is it worth it? What are the grants? Where is the free money in college? I would have sought out places like PPIC for information to grow me.
Wonderful. You heard it from Judge Tani, try new things. I have a son who's going to be going to Berkeley High actually next year, and I'm trying to encourage him to try new things, because sometimes you in experiencing things and trying out a new club, you realize that, hey, maybe I'm not as interested in this, and it's good to know that as well. But you also learn from those experiences, which is really, really, really important. Was there a defining moment or perhaps experience in your life when you realized that service as a judicial officer officer was your calling in a way to have a career in public service?
You know, Eric, I wish I had a good answer to that, and I don't. I will say I didn't know that I would be a judge. I never had dreams to be the chief, never. I just thought I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to advocate for other people. I wanted to be the voice for people who didn't have a voice or representation. I wanted to be an advocate, and I knew that piece, which is why I went to law school. But for a defining moment, I tell you, I don't know that for me anyway, there was a defining moment. I think I grew into my passion of public service, and that is by putting myself out there. That is by asking people what they did, showing up, trying new things as a person with a college degree and a law degree, trying new things, working for different employers, finding out, I don't want to do this. I don't know what I want to do, but I don't want to do this. I mean, the process of elimination really mattered. But for me, the defining moment to become a judge came when I was doing public service in Sacramento in the governor's office. And I was just a minion. I was a lawyer working for someone else, helping with the governor's legal cases and the governor's legislation. But when he termed out, and this I did not know, when a governor terms out, he starts to place his workers. And they came to me and said, where would you like to go? Ideally, you could go to the Attorney General's office and become a deputy AG. You can lobby, you can go to a government agency, or you could go back to court and be the lowest level of judge, a municipal court judge, which is a commissioner. And I had already been a trial attorney as a prosecutor. And I said, if I have a vote in this, I will go back to court. It wasn't more of a defining moment, it was more I need a job. And that turned into the journey of a lifetime.
So some of us, many, as an attorney of color, I'll just say, we deal with things like imposter syndrome, like not feeling like maybe you're good enough or to do it. To be a judge, it's just such an important thing. When did you kind of feel like, I can do this? Maybe it was when you're a trial attorney and looking at the bench and seeing maybe yourself in someone, but when did you feel like, I can actually do this? I can be a judge myself.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, before I was a judge, I was a prosecutor. I worked as a deputy district attorney, so I tried cases. And I was an anomaly in those days because there were a lot of women prosecutors in Sacramento, and there were almost no women prosecutors of color. So I would come in and they would think I was the file clerk, they would think I was a witness, they would say, I'm sorry, ma'am, you can't come past here, only lawyers are allowed. And I'd have to say, well, I am a lawyer and I'm here to. So there's a lot of explanation as a person of color and a female in those days. This is the 80s, and very unlike today. And the more I tried cases, honestly, the more awkward, the more uncomfortable, the more I lost, the better I became. Because when I win as a trial attorney, I feel like, I definitely should have won. When I lose, I'm like, how did that happen? I should have won. And then I start replaying it in my mind where I went wrong. Or, to your point, where did that judge go wrong? So it was more of a time to really think about the failures and own what I owned. And then in time, I began to think, well, I don't think that's the right ruling. But of course, being respectful, arguing my point in front of the judge, disagreeing with the judge. If I'm still losing, then I would be saying, Your Honor, I'd like to make a record of this for appeal. So just pressing my point, but doing it very respectfully. Yeah. And so then I thought, I probably could do that job as well as they could anyway.
Mm-hmm. Growth comes in dealing with adversity. You heard it from Judge Tani. We're not always perfect. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we even lose cases, but you learn from those experiences and it makes you a better advocate, a better lawyer, a better judge in your case, which is excellent. There are a lot of young people in this room who can't yet vote and aren't able to vote. Why does their voice matter, and what can they do to get involved civically in their communities and engage in public service at a young age?
Those are great questions, and I'm glad you asked them, and I know I agree with you on many of the views that you have as well. Your voice matters because we, judges, lawyers, the Commonwealth Club, and the people who run it, we're just stewards of these positions. You will move into them. You will be us in a few years. And it is important that you start familiarizing yourself with that future and preparing yourself. Be prepared for opportunity. So that means using your voice, asking questions, inquiring. Truly, your voice matters because we're stewards. We're holding this for you for the future. We're trying to build this for you for the future because we understand that our country, our state, our locality, our high school, our city, it only exists in order to prepare you. And if you don't use your voice, someone else will, and you'll be subject to that voice. So at least for me, the youngest of 4 children, if I didn't use my voice, I was never heard, or forgotten, or overlooked, or no one thought about what Tawny needed. So I had to use my voice from an early age, and I know you do too, in your families and in your communities and among your friends. Your voice matters. We listen to you. Good leaders, good lawyers, the Commonwealth, a distinguished group, PPIC, we listen to you. We want to know what you need so we can write to you and give it to you and prepare you because we all realize that it'll be yours sooner than you think. And I think the way you use your voice is by continuing to use it. It's the trial and error of using your voice. And I will just tell you, as a woman, as a girl, young girl of color, in a community that really didn't value female voices compared to my brother's voices, and then being a woman of color in a legal world back in the 80s, which was predominantly white men, my voice, I had to yell in court to be heard. And sometimes when I was heard, the response was this: "Well, what do you need, sugar?" That was the response. Now, that would be highly inappropriate today, but in those days, it was my door open. Your voice matters. Your voice will grow. Your voice will grow in strength and influence. Practice now. And your voice matters because these are your issues, and we're trying to improve them for you, but you're going to have a lot to do still once you get here.
Absolutely. Your voice matters. Register to vote when you can. I think there'll be an opportunity to register to vote later on today. That's one way to exercise your voice and to let your voice be heard. But don't be afraid to show up at a city council meeting. If you have an issue that's important to you as a young person in your city, attend a city council meeting and advocate to your city council for the importance of that. I'm a city attorney and I sit on the dais in city council meetings. When a member of the public shows up to communicate and express a desire or they're frustrated about something, the council listens. The council listens, and they'll listen to you if you show up and advocate for things that are important to you. So your voice, as Judge Tani mentioned, very important, and use it in every opportunity that you can. That's how you can advocate for the things that are important to you. Throughout your career, you have been an advocate for civics education and civic discourse education. Why are those things important, and why are they important to you?
Thank you. I know that civics is sometimes broadly used and all well-meaning, but I will first say how I understand civics. Mm-hmm. And for me, civics is a 4-part pillar. So the first part of civics is a body of knowledge. We try to teach a body of knowledge. And that body of knowledge is state government, federal government, local government, city, county, school districts, water districts, a lot of what you do with public service as a city attorney and county council. The reason we teach this body of law is so that you know where the levers of power exist, so that when you want to bring about change, you know where to go to bring about change. So for example, if you are upset about driver license restrictions for people under 18 and in high school when you get your license, if you think those are unfair, you don't like those state laws, then you certainly don't go and protest at the water district. You don't go to probably your city council unless you're looking for them to take up a resolution. You'll know that that state law is made by the legislature, and there's a committee that deals with Department of Motor Vehicles, and that's where you bring your protest. That's where you go to make your voice heard. So that in government, this body of law tells you where to go for power. When people complain to me about a law that's unfair, I always say, well, is it a law? Is it the Constitution? Is it a city regulate? What is it? And they look at me like, what do you mean, what is it? Well, how are you going to change it if you don't go to the right people? I say things to younger audiences. I say, if I want to play golf, I'm not going to show up at a tennis court. Because I know in sports, that's not how it works. That's the body of knowledge that you learn in civics. Then in civics participation and engagement and discourse, like today you'll have, we teach you a way of communicating, a way of getting along with people, because those are skills you'll need whether you are winning the Super Bowl or whether you are a city attorney. How to get along with people, how to listen, how to take a counter argument, how to be open, how to be inclusive. So civics includes a piece that is how you think and how you express yourself. That's another pillar. Then the third pillar to me of civics is participation, your voice, showing up at a city council, showing up at your student government where there's laws or rules being made for your school. That's the participation, that is the voice piece. And then the fourth pillar is change. You feel so strongly you're going to institute change, you're going to organize for change, and that's what the four civics pieces are. And it's really important to me, I think, because having grown up in a life of seeing injustice happen to people who didn't know how it happened to them, who felt helpless, who had no voice, who didn't know where to go, who were really being taken advantage of and people weren't helping them, that's where public service comes in. Government exists to do for people what they cannot do for themselves. And that's why I joined the judicial branch, law, the work to empower people to be advocates for themselves, and that's what civic engagement, civic learning does. Plus, I've just learned, as you also know as a lawyer and a city attorney, is we can't get anything done unless we are collaborative, inclusive, know all sides, have listened to each other, and are moving forward in respect. We can all disagree, but as we like to say at the Supreme Court, we want to be agreeable when we disagree. Or can we just do this respectfully? Can we do this collectively and admirably with each other? And that's part of, I think, the discourse that is missing today.
Respect. Absolutely. Wonderful. I want to talk about just representation. So in 1977, you were in high school when Rose Bird became the first woman appointed to serve on the California Supreme Court. You yourself were the first woman of color to serve on as California's Chief Justice. Why do you think that representation in government across all branches and at all levels is important, and why does that representation matter?
Well, I'll start with why that representation matters first, and that is government is for all of us. As I said, government is to do for us what we cannot individually do for ourselves. And there's that famous quote that they say it's Alexander Hamilton, but there's provenance arguments about that, and that is the first duty of society is justice. If people in a society do not believe that they're all being treated fairly in process and application, we can have no faith in one another. We can have no faith in the work that is being done by government. And so that's why it is so important to have representation. We must have and hear from all of the different communities affected. We have to know the lived experience of the people we are representing. And that comes through having us be part of government. That was the whole premise of our Constitution, is a government by the people, that's us. For the people, that's us. I like to tell the story that when the United States Constitution was created by mostly white propertied men, they had no idea of an us that looked like me. That Constitution was built for 10 million people. Now it governs 800 plus million people. So we have to be able to all be a part of government as representative for us to have trust, faith, and confidence in our democracy. And that starts with having all of us represented in some way at the table.
Absolutely. Representation allows for your voices to be heard. And when policies are being made at the state level and decisions are being made at the local level, if your voice is not there, if it's not a representative body, then those decisions that are being made are not representative and they don't reflect the broader community. So it's important that we are present, we're there, we're visible, and we're advocating for those issues that are important to us. And that's why, and that's one way that to make sure that each of our representation, whatever we're bringing to the table, is informing those decisions.
Yes, and however big or small, we don't want you to wait till you're at the table at the White House. We want you to be advocating in your schools about lunchrooms and about food and about holidays and about inclusivity and about the names of certain holidays and what your school seeks to celebrate and what it should be doing more for in the community. It's nothing is too small in terms of having the voice and the representation of it. And you don't have to wait till you are in a profession to do so. It starts now. It starts with what's happening even in your community, church, home, organizations, and groups.
Great. I think we have time for maybe one more question. And so let's ask, one of the main topics of these field trips is civil dialogue and discussion. Why do you think it's important to talk, work, and engage with people you disagree with? And do you have examples from your time as the Chief Justice where you do this?
Absolutely. We are a unique and diverse group of people in California and the country, and that is our strength. But we don't have the same unanimous opinions and views of things. We're going to hear people express a different opinion, and we should hear it. Having difference of opinion means you have more knowledge. It means you know more about that other person. They know more about you. You also build your foundation of information and knowledge. We cannot solve problems in this world, and there are many in California that need to be solved, unless we're able to discuss and have and resolve high conflict resolution areas. We need to be able to talk with each other, to have an exchange of ideas. We need to think about those ideas. We need to learn from them. Even if I disagree with them, I may now better understand why you hold them. And that makes me a wiser, kinder person. And I've had many experiences, and I know you have as a lawyer. This is the work we do. You don't hire a lawyer or come to court unless there's high conflict. And yet we know that in high conflict, we need to be our best selves, listeners, respectful, knowing that each side has a point, and trying to find a negotiated middle to resolve this. So I say this because as Chief Justice, even with title, it doesn't mean that you'll engage in civil discourse with everyone you meet. But I also didn't let the person who name-called me, I didn't end that dialogue. I tried to overlook it to get to a greater good. But if we don't listen to each other, we can't come together to solve it. Life is a negotiation. It is a collaboration. It is respect for each other. It's civility. We have something to learn from each other. And if all else fails, if for some reason now, and this is more of my legal head, yours too, I want to engage in a civil discussion and discourse with you. If we can't reach an agreement, then we're going to go to court. And now what I have is knowledge of how I'm going to beat you, because I know how you think, and I know your strategy, and I know your weak points, and that has made me stronger. So if we can't negotiate this, then I'm going to beat you in court because now I know your mind.
I don't want to have to litigate against Judge Tani. I'm afraid. At this point, we are going to switch over to student questions. So the students get to play moderator and ask questions of the Chief Justice, the former Chief Justice. There is a microphone in the aisle. So please, if you have any questions for the Chief Justice, please start lining up by the microphone and feel free to ask away.
What were your most difficult decisions, and how did those moments shape your relationship with the judicial system and your colleagues?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Well, first I'd say as to the cases that the Supreme Court of California hears, those are all difficult because the only reason they're at the Supreme Court is that there are at least two reasonable sides. two reasonable interpretations of the law. And so we take it at the Supreme Court because we need to clarify, we need a one rule of law. And so every case at the Supreme Court involves basically a question that is capable of being answered in multiple reasonable ways. So then you get 7 people, and I really sort of mean this laughingly, and we all have our steak knives out when that case comes. And we all have our own offices and our own set of attorneys, and we independently each analyze the case. But we do that in order that the public, California, really gets the best, cleanest answer and rule of law. And so as Chief Justice, we have a lot of conflict over that. We have a lot of differences of opinion. And the authoring chamber or myself will try to find common ground so that we can write an opinion that will answer the question and help the people. Also, as Chief Justice, there's high conflict because I happen to have a 12-year term that started in the Great Recession. So that means 14 years ago, California was in deep, deep, deep deficit, and I had to make a decision to close down programs, close courthouses, close courtrooms, let people go, offer golden handshakes, ask people if they would work for free. And I worked for free for a while. It was a time when I had to tighten belts and tell people we have no money for this. And they were not happy to hear that. They were quite angry, in fact, for a long time. And the legislature was angry also at the courts because they thought we used too much money. I would go there regularly and we would have terrible knockdown, drag-out arguments in chambers at the legislature. All I can tell you is thank goodness for term limits, because they're gone, and I still had about 9, 10 more years. Also, there's conflict with all of the different groups that care about justice. So the criminal defense bar of defense attorneys care very strongly about some of the things that are happening in California. The Deputy District Attorneys Association care very strongly against the views of the criminal defense attorneys. I would bring those groups in and try to find common ground. There were lots of arguments. There were a lot of nasty exchanges. There were a lot of people leaving the room. But we tried to set the ground rules to try to let everybody be civil here so we can get to a solution. And that's basically the nature of the judiciary, is conflict, bringing groups together. Oftentimes we didn't make people happy, particularly during COVID. Again, during my time in COVID, I had to shut courts down. I had to end jury trials. People were very upset, claiming I was violating the Constitution. I had to tell groups, you can't come to court. We won't be a super spreader. I had to tell prisons and jails, don't bring your inmates to the courts because we can't spread the illness. A lot of people were angry, claiming that their days were at court were being blocked. But we had to take action, and we did, because you still need a decision in tough times.
Hi. As someone looking to have a career in government, what would you say are the departments that will need to be more focused on as the polarization of our politics increase?
That's a great question, too. I think the polarization of our politics has multiple reasons, and we were discussing this in the back room. I think that the departments that need the most focus for improving our democracy and to eliminate the polarization is really education. I think we have to look to you and the generations behind you to think differently about how we work together and communicate, and that has to be taught. Evidently, in this day and age, we were talking about this, it has to be taught. And so I think with higher education and PK through 12 programs we study at the Public Policy Institute of California, we must train our new leaders and educate our new leaders early on civics, creating citizens, creating involvement. We also, I believe, truly need to address poverty in California, which is the root cause of so many of our problems in terms of housing, homelessness, drug addiction, access to education. We need to make sure that people have the ability to find shelter, have security, a way to get to an education, to participate. We need that in government, but we probably need it not only just in in departments of government, but we also need it in our leaders. We need you to run for elected office and be the example of how to be civil and bring along your colleagues to negotiation and problem solve.
And I would be remiss not to mention, as a local government lecturer at Berkeley Law, an advocate and for local government as well. It's sometimes when we divide on issues, we're talking theoretically about things, and it's different when you're talking to your neighbors and people who live in your community about things that are affecting you every day. There's a saying that politics are local, and it's different when you're having conversations with your neighbors about it and members of your community about something that's important. Sometimes it's easier to have that conversation and to find a common ground when you're talking to someone you know, as opposed to theoretically about a big policy issue that's maybe making its way through Congress. So it's a good way to kind of cut your teeth and get experience learning how to be an advocate and advocating for policy. Doing so at the local level is a good way to start. And all of you guys will be old enough to run for local office very soon. So maybe give a thought to that.
I would just love to know, as someone who's interested in like the emotions behind decision making, what would you say a moment in your career made you the most proud, made the biggest impact, maybe also something that you wish you could have done differently?
When you first as a lawyer, you have a lot of training even after law school that is mandatory in California that really teaches you about different aspects, not only of the hard skills of law, but also the really critical and important soft skills of law, and also about unconscious bias, and also training along those lines. And the same is true for judges. When you become a judge, you don't just automatically know how to become one. We have what I call, it's called New Judges Training, and it's colloquially known as Judges Kindergarten, where we have judges for about a week. They're lawyers, they're now judges, and we teach them about emotions and keeping them out of court, and knowing that if you start to feel emotions, and you need to get off the bench, and maybe you need to ask yourself, I should not even be on the case, because maybe it involves something too close to home. Mm-hmm. We also then thereafter have judges, what we call Judges College, which is 2 intensive weeks of live-in college where you're with new judges, also no more than 2 years, where we talk about emotional involvement. We talk about alcohol abuse, drug abuse. We talk about mental health, in addition to all of the hard skills like probate law and what I'll say, unlimited civil. And so we teach it. And then, of course, in California, we have a Commission on Judicial Performance, whereas if you as a litigant or a lawyer think that the judge was acting in a way outside the law, emotionally or otherwise, you can report the judge, and then an investigation could be opened to actually ultimately remove the judge from office. This happens often. It's a commission that's based mostly of non-lawyers and non-judges. We have the same for lawyers, where you can report the lawyer, but we work very hard at trying to be truly clear to the law. And the older you get in law, the better you get at separating yourself from the emotions. For me, the hardest cases I ever tried as a lawyer were domestic violence cases, because the victim often did not want to continue to prosecute someone she loved and someone who was likely paying the mortgage. The other hardest case that I ever presided over as a judge was when I had to try juveniles your age who in those days were tried in adult court as adults. So I would have to have a long conversation with a 17-year-old and his attorney, trying to convince him that a 40-year sentence was really better than 50 years. And they're almost impossible conversations to have, to fathom when you're only 17 years old that a 40-year sentence is a good deal. But let me tell you, it is under the circumstances of what you could face. And if we go to trial, the law requires I send you to prison for 50 or 60 years. And these are heinous crimes. I'm not talking about car thefts and little things. I'm talking about shoot 'em up, gun, hold 'em up things, robberies, kidnaps with injury. Those are really hard cases. I think about them today. But the law has changed, thankfully, based on people who use their voice, that said young people should be treated differently. So it's a far different landscape, and those kinds of sentences don't happen today.
From each of your perspectives, I was wondering how we could combat or face the echo chambers we currently face in the U.S. and its government.
That's for you first, Eric.
Well, I think part of it is being active in letting your voice be present in those discussions. So I think sometimes there needs to just be truth telling. There needs to be someone who's level-headed and rational. I think it's okay to be emotional and to be passionate about things that we care about, but you don't want to lose your persuasiveness with your emotion, right? And so if you're advocating for something, you want to make sure that you're able to be kind of level-headed, because that's going to be persuasive and convince others. It's hard out there right now. There's a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of things that are really keeping people from finding middle ground, and it is really hard. But what I've found in my experience and throughout life is just taking the time to listen. Listen to the other side, listen to other people's perspectives, even when you don't agree with it, even if you almost want to just plug your ears because you can't believe what you're hearing. But sometimes people just need to be heard, and just hearing what they have to say allows them to feel validated in some ways, and it then it opens them up to hearing what you have to say. And ultimately, if you could just move the needle just a little bit, and if we're all moving the needle just a little bit, we're in a much better place as a community, as a country, a state, and otherwise. But a lot of it is just us being willing to do that work, to take the time to listen, to not just disagree because we fundamentally disagree without even hearing what they have to say. Just taking the time to listen, I think that, in my experience, has really been effective in really bringing people together and allowing people to see another side to things.
I fully agree with that, but I want to go to your point about the echo chamber piece, and that is something that's always bothered me as a woman, as a woman of color, and that is, for a long time in my life, I felt like people were telling me their opinion and not the facts. And I want to actually form my own opinion. And if I respect you, I want you to form your own opinion. What do you think? So to the echo chamber piece, I really encourage all of you to not accept on face value everything you read, and that you seek out other sources on the same subject so that you have a more well-rounded view of the issue. Because the issue will have pros and cons. You need to be aware of all of it. And that's one of the reasons I'm at the Public Policy Institute of California, because we are nonpartisan, and we engage in objective facts and thoughtful analysis, and we don't put our finger or our thumb on the scale. We're not trying to tell you your opinion. We respect you enough to give you the facts for you to come to your own opinion. I just feel, and maybe it's just my own bias, has always been a woman of color, that people are always telling me things as if that's what I should believe. But we want your opinion, and we want your voice to that opinion. So echo chambers worry me because they feed off of each other. And I am almost never in complete agreement with what the argument or position in the echo chamber. So I really urge you to listen, to really hear the other side, understand the strong points, but really read independently. Go to our website, read our information, and build your own foundation and form your own opinion. Be who you are, not what someone expects you to be.
Hi, so as a woman, and you were talking about working in cases that involve domestic violence and topics like that, how has that changed the way that you either perceive cases legally or personally, and how has that fed into your daily life now?
Oh, thank you. That's a good question too. Well, it's a lot like Eric just said. There are very few slam dunk cases. And I'm talking not only about domestic violence, but anytime you hear about a circumstance. And as a lawyer, as a judge, and I work also as a mediator, I hear lots of sides to the same incident. And so I realize we all bring our own perspective and our own opinion, which is a good thing. And so what I have learned as running a DV court, starting the first DV court in Sacramento, and teaching in domestic violence, is there are a lot of pieces to it. And some of it's physical, but some of it is emotional, a lot is psychological. And so I will probably say to you that the more I've been in the law and the longer I've been a judge in my personal life, I judge a lot less. There's just too many factors that balance out the scale. I'm hardly black and white. I'm almost never binary. A favorite saying in my household around the kitchen is, well, to be fair. We have a lot of that. To be fair, let's hear the other side. And I think what our surveys show at PPIC is that the younger generations are less divided. Less divided politically, less polarized, and that gives me a great deal of hope for the future.
What would you say to the young people in this country who've lost faith and trust in the government?
I get that. I'm reading the papers and I have a little bit of that too, to be honest. So your feelings are validated. Your feelings are righteous. And I also come from the school of thought that feelings are never wrong. Feelings mean we need to listen, because feelings are, I think, pure. What I would say to you, though, is this, and to me myself, our democracy is the envy of the world. It's also a huge experiment that's only 237 years young. I tell people and remind them there are doors in Italy older than our government. But we have embarked on this experiment of democracy by the people and for the people. And it's going to be messy. And we're going to lose faith. But we have 3 branches of government for a reason. And that is to balance each other out and to check and balance each other. And you have an opportunity to be part of any of that government, any of those branches, starting locally to beyond the federal. And so I don't want you to lose faith, because we have faith in you to improve government and to start locally. A lot of what happens at the federal level doesn't affect me. A lot of what happens at my city council meeting, where I know the mayor because I went to school with him, matters a lot. I call him up on the regular. I text him because I try to make my voice heard too. So I would encourage you that it's not monolithic. We want you to be a disruptor. We expect you to form a government that you believe in, but it'll require you to help do that. And there's a lot of support for you out there. So I say start local and realize there are 3 branches, and we hope that you will be a part of it in some way.
This is a question for the 2 of you. You've both talked about the importance of having your feelings heard, expressing your voice and your opinions. Based off of this, what do the both of you think about the process of jury nullification?
Jury nullification exists in a courtroom, and in my experience as a trial lawyer and as a trial judge, jury nullification is probably the elephant in the room that no one talks about. Yet at the same time, it's well within the jury's right to reject the laws that we are asking them to apply. And yet, jury nullification is not anything I've ever seen in practice. And it's probably hard to see, because at least in front of a jury, you either get one of 3 verdicts, right? You either, and I'll take a criminal case, you either get guilty, not guilty, or you're hung, meaning that they can't decide. And all the court can legally inquire is, how are you divided? So we're divided 7-5, we're divided 6-6. We're unanimous for not guilty or guilty. We are not allowed to go into, by law, by statute, the jury's inner workings and discussion, because that's sacrosanct. That is a confidential communication. That is not available to us. So if the jury went into the deliberation room and said, I don't believe in that law, and the other 6 said, well, we're not going to do jury nullification. If it comes out 6-6, we don't really know why. We'll hear about it from just the rumors in the courthouse and if the bailiff overheard someone talking, but it's not actionable for us in a way that we as a judge can do anything about.
Another student asked about, how you keep emotions out of cases and stay very neutral, but I was more curious. You have very strong ideals about, public policy and social service, and I was curious, as Chief Judge, or Chief Justice, how do you navigate situations where you do have to sacrifice your ideals, or you really have to kind of uphold a law that maybe doesn't agree with what you believe in?
Thank you. That's another insightful question. At the High Court, particularly of any state, and the California Supreme Court, it is true that there's a lot of legislation that gets signed into law where I disagree personally. But I also realize that's not my role. They don't want to know what Tawny thinks. They want to know what the Supreme Court thinks. And the beauty of the judicial branch is that we write out our decisions. So you can see how we think. And you can, if I don't agree with my colleagues, I'll write a dissenting opinion. But I'm going to write out where exactly I disagree. So the beauty for me of the judicial branch is that it's transparent. We write out where we disagree and why. But I will also say that we talk about it. Even though we don't write it, we'll sit around the table and I'll know exactly about the personal feelings and experiences of my colleague. But my colleague is professional enough not to let that color his or her interpretation. Plus, we all critique each other's work. So if we see it, someone's going to call it out. And that will cause reflection and further discussion at the table. And I will say this too, the beauty of the California Supreme Court is we do disagree. But when we disagree, I said it's very graceful. Sometimes I would turn to one of my colleagues and say, did he just disagree with me? And she'd say, yeah, he did. Because I really couldn't tell. It was so soft and kind. But I will say that we feel it, we're human, but we remove ourselves from it. It's not always perfect, but we really try to do it. And I don't know that there's another branch of government that actually tries to remove itself from the emotionality of the case.
So earlier you talked about men not taking you seriously in the courtroom. So as a woman of color who didn't attend an Ivy League or a top school, did you ever feel obligated to work harder in order to prove to men or people in general that you deserve to be in the same courtroom?
Thank you. Absolutely. Yes. I think I would not be candid if I didn't say to you that I tend to over-prepare. I tend to imagine arguments that aren't made. I kind of have a totem of a rhino. I always imagine the rhino because thick of skin, long of tusk, so the tusk is patience. No, absolutely. And I wish that wasn't true, you know, and I try to teach my daughters that, yes, I know they feel it too, not as much, I think, as their mother, but yeah, it exists, and it shouldn't. And so we have some pretty ribald jokes about it in my house that I'm not at liberty to share because it's being taped. And we have some slogans at our house, and it's to empower us, not to feel like imposters.
So just a quick note to everyone, we are closing in on the end of our time with former Chief Justice. This will be our last question.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
So you spoke earlier about the importance of constructive civil discourse. So I'd like to know, what do you view as the greatest threat to constructive discourse in our society, and what steps do we have to take to find a solution to this?
Thank you. Well, I think the greatest threat that we have to our civil discourse is the demonization of the other side for their disagreement. And then it becomes personal and might even be ad hominem to the person. And there are enough haters out there that that's enough for them. So we never even get to why do we disagree, and that you probably disagree, and you do have a basis for disagreement, but we don't even get there because we end up going off on some tangent about the person's, I don't know, appearance or something, or about their school, and that has nothing to do with whether or not this discussion, this negotiation has validity. So this demonization of each other, these memes, these simple, superficial way of thinking about things and insulting the other party is really injuring us as a democracy right now.
And not to be overly dramatic, but social media sometimes doesn't help either, because it's harder to have conversations with people in person and disagree in a disrespectful way than when you're just communicating online, and sometimes things get lost in translation. So I think more in-person conversations, having those hard conversations in person, sometimes it's much better and more productive than engaging negatively online as well. What a great program. That was awesome. Just a few last words before we wrap up. Many thanks to everyone and the students who came from all over the Bay Area to be here and to participate. Many thanks to the Commonwealth Club. This was amazing. And then Judge Tani, for those of you watching online, please check out the Creating Citizens webpage for more information about student and educator civics education projects. Those of you in the audience today, please stop by the voter registration table that's available during lunch. And before we sign off, let's please give former Chief Justice Tani Cantil-Sakauye one more big round of applause.
Thank you.
Yeah.